All right. So I will turn it over to Jeremy.
Thank you, Christian. Good evening, everyone, on this beautiful night. I thank you all for being with us and taking the time out. My name is Jeremy Rosenberg. I'm the planning director for the town of Dedham. And of course, I'd like to welcome you to this first community meeting regarding the VFW Parkway Providence Highway Corridor Action Plan. I thank you all again for taking this time for what we feel is a unique collaboration between the town of Dedham and the city of Boston to develop a 21st century transit vision and plan for all along this important corridor. Again, thank you. Next slide. I think before I go through this agenda, I do want to preface that, unfortunately, we're not all together in a room in person. I wish we could, and hopefully those days will be coming soon, but we're doing our best to replicate that tonight. And there'll be, as you can see on the agenda tonight, we'll be doing breakout groups where we can, as we have a large group tonight, we want to break this down and to smaller groups of about 15 to 20 where folks are going to feel comfortable. So we're going through the introductions right now. Let's take about 10 minutes, 5 minutes. We're going to talk about the action plan. What is this? Why are you here tonight? What are we going to do? Where are we? And how long is this going to take? Then we're going to go into the existing conditions and needs. I think we can all talk about that this roadway is definitely a relic of the past, and there's a lot of issues. And we're going to talk about some of the existing conditions that are out there that will help guide our conversation. The meat and potatoes of this discussion tonight will be a visioning and breakout groups. We want to spend roughly about 20-25 minutes talking about where do we want to go with this based on what we've heard on these existing conditions and all that you've said in the surveys, all the data that we've gotten so far. Help us guide and steer us where we want to go as we start to develop concepts for what do we want this roadway to become. And then after we do the breakouts, we'll do a short recap of each one of these groups. We probably have, we're going to have at least 10 groups. And we'll share, just a quick synopsis of each our facilitator team will discuss what they felt were the high level items in each of those groups so we can share. And then, of course, when do we get together next? That's always the important thing. And we hope to see you very soon, and we'll talk about that as far as next steps. So, Christian, if you can go to the next slide. I do want to again welcome, and this meeting couldn't be possible without a large project team, and so I just want to recognize the team members, and if they can wave, say hey, say hi, and I think you'll notice anyone that's from the town of Dedham, Boston Planning and Development Agency, Central Transportation Planning Staff, and the Metropolitan Area Planning Council. You'll see their names branded as such, but I just want to call out some individuals. So again, I'm from the town. Also from the town of Dedham is Michelle Tinger and John Sisson. From the Boston Planning and Development Agency, Sam Devine and Joe Blankenship. From our consultant team, Central Transportation and Planning Staff, that's CTPS, you'll see. Doesn't quite fit in there, but Mark Abbott and Seth Asante. And from our other consultant team, the Metropolitan Area Planning Council, known as MAPC, we have Travis Pollock and Christian Brandt. So again, thank you. It takes a village to pull off a large meeting like this. So again, thank you. And the folks that you see here that are part of this team, in addition to some other members of MAPC and CTPS that have joined us here tonight to ensure that we have able to do a large amount of breakout groups, we'll be here to help you out through this evening and guide the conversation. And of course, I do want to recognize Senator Michael Rush, who I believe is on the line tonight, and Representative Paul McMurtry is also with us, and Representative Ed Coppinger for securing the funding to make this action plan process possible. So without that, we wouldn't be here tonight. So a tip of the hat to our elected officials, and I'm sure they will continue to maintain progress and secure additional funding to ultimately realize and reconstruct this roadway to the vision that we're going to develop through this process. Next slide. And so this is we're going to ask there's some interactive pieces to this community meeting we're having tonight. So this is typical of what we do in community meetings. We want to ensure that our engagement efforts, that's getting folks to come to these meetings, ensuring that we're doing a proper outreach, and that we're ensuring that we're getting every meeting, every stakeholder. We're talking to all the folks that can come to this meeting. So we want to do a quick, not mandatory poll, though we highly encourage you to take this poll to help us in our efforts. And Christian from MAPC will guide us through this quick Zoom poll.
Great, so you're gonna get a poll that will pop up on your screen in just a second. There are a series of questions, and in order to answer all of them, you have to scroll through the poll. So you will only at first see probably 1 or 2 questions, but there are more if you scroll down. So I'm about to launch it. You should see it on your screen now, and we will leave that up for a few moments so that those of you who would like to respond can. I think, let me relaunch the poll. I think it might have been closed. There we go.
Yeah, I think just for any other co-host, make sure not to hit end poll, even though it's on our screen.
Awesome. So I'm starting to see some answers come in. Thank you to those of you who are answering the poll questions. We've got about 64% of people responding. The answers are still rolling in. All right, we'll give it a few more, maybe 15 more seconds. So if you haven't had the chance to respond to the poll yet and you want to, make sure you get to that. It looks like we have 84% of people have responded, so I'll give it a little bit longer. All right, so I'm going to end the poll. And Jeremy, do you want me to share the results? I think you're muted.
Absolutely.
Great. All right, so it looks like, as you can see in the poll, about 70% of respondents live in Dedham, and an equal percentage of respondents live in West Roxbury or somewhere else. Most of the folks who are attending are between the ages of 35 and 64. 57% of folks who responded identify as female, and 42% as male, and then 1% as non-binary. The very vast majority of people who responded identify as white, 96%. And then it looks like in terms of traveling through the corridor, about 82% of people typically drive through the corridor, although there's a healthy percentage of both bicyclists and walkers. And in terms of hearing about this project, it looks like social media really did the trick. And that is where 34% of folks heard about this, followed by email newsletters. All right. Awesome, back to you, Jeremy.
Thank you, Christian, and thank you everyone for taking the poll. We will use this for to ensure that we're communicating effectively and getting all the folks that we can from West Roxbury and Dedham and anyone else in between to get, that they know about this initiative and hopefully are participating. And of course, we ask you all to help spread the word on our next efforts too. And you know, we wouldn't have this many people in the room if it wasn't for you and helping to share with whether your peer networks or your stakeholder groups or whatnot. So thank you, everyone. And for now, we're gonna start to get into this. We're gonna hand it over to CTPS, Central Transportation Planning staff, and they're going to talk about what is this initiative that we're talking about tonight. Thank you, everyone.
Hi. And I think before we get started, if you still have the poll on your screen, you can now click close. I think some of you might still have the poll lingering up. Feel free to close it. Thanks, Seth. Sorry.
Hi, my name is Seth Asante from the Central Transportation Planning staff. The goal for the action plan is to transform a car-centric corridor into a route that connects people to places and meet the needs of local residents, businesses, people who bicycle, people who walk, and people who ride transit, as well as people who drive. Also, to make short and long-term recommendation for safe access to schools, to shops, neighborhoods, recreational areas, and also transit areas. Recreational areas including the Charles River and Meadowbrook. On the right-hand side is the project limit. It starts from Marine Rotary, which is to the south, all the way to the Spring Street and Vfw Parkway intersection. Next slide. These are the items included in the scope for the action plan: to collect data, to perform existing conditions analysis, also to come out with the needs assessments with input from the public, to develop and evaluate improvement concepts that are supported by community engagement efforts, and to make recommendations that have input and feedback from the community. Throughout the action plan, we will be using community engagement throughout. Next slide. This is the schedule for the corridor action plan, showing the tasks, the delivery dates, which is the timeline, and also the sequence of tasks. The tasks with the green timelines have been completed. Those tasks with the blue timelines are in progress or yet to be started. The red vertical line shows where we are now. We expect to complete the action plan by summer this year. Next slide. For the next few slides, I'll be talking about the existing conditions, problems, and needs of the corridor. Next slide. The roadway spans two communities, Boston and Dedham. This is the roadway in the Dedham segment. It has 2 lanes for moving traffic in each direction. And in the Dedham side, there is a frontage road that connects to the Dedham Mall area. There are sidewalks on both sides of the street. Next slide. This also shows the roadway in the Boston segment. Again, 2 lanes for moving traffic in each direction, a wide shoulder, and a sidewalk in each direction. Next slide. This is the existing roadway in graphical form. 12 feet wide travel lanes, 9 feet wide shoulder, and 5 to 6 feet sidewalk. Next slide. These are the characteristics of the existing roadway. The section we are studying is in MassDOT jurisdiction. The roadway is classified as an urban principal arteria, and it is part of the National Highway System, which gives it a higher classification in the roadway class. It's a two-way, four-lane roadway, and it's open to all traffic. The right of way in the corridor varies between 84 feet and 110 feet wide, with the wider section in Dedham and the narrower section in Boston. The speed limit for most part of the corridor is 45 miles per hour. Next slide. We identified 227 crashes within the Vfw Parkway and Providence highway between 2015 and 2019. There was one fatality during this 5-year period. 20% of the crashes that we identified involved injury, and 80% were property damage only. The majority of the crashes were rear-end crashes at the intersections, also angle crashes and side swipe in between the intersections. 11% of the crashes were single vehicle crashes where a vehicle ran off the road and hit a utility pole or an object along the roadway. The numbers shown in the yellow circles are the crashes that occurred at the intersections. Marine Rotary Experience had the most crashes, 108 crashes out of the 227 crashes, which is representing almost about 50% of the crashes. Next slide. We collected data in November 2020 to analyze the existing conditions. The data was collected during the pandemic, so the traffic volumes were adjusted with historical counts that exist in the corridor in 2018. The Providence Highway and Vfw Parkway carry between 34,000 vehicles and 36,000 vehicles per weekday. Next slide. Besides the traffic volume data, we also collected speed data to assess travel speeds within the corridor. The speeds that are shown with the blue letters are the average speed. The speed with the red color are the 85th percentile speed. These are the speeds that are exceeded by 15% of the motorists through the corridor. The average speed in the southbound direction is around 43 to 44 miles per hour. And in the northbound direction is around 37 to 38 miles per hour. And these are consistent with the speed limit of 45 miles per hour. However, 15% of the motorists heading southbound exceed 50 miles per hour. And in the northbound, 15% also exceed 46 miles per hour. Next slide. There are 4 bus routes that serve the Dedham Mall area. These are the Route 34 and 34E, Route 35, and Route 52. These bus routes connect the Dedham Mall area to Forest Hill Watertown Yard, and also to Walpole Center. According to the fall 2019 weekday ridership, there were around 1,100 boardings and alightings at the Dedham area mall stops. Of this ridership, 70% of the riders use the Route 34 and 34E buses, and 26% use the Route 35 bus. The Route 52 buses carry about 4% of the riders. This is low ridership, and the Route 52 route is scheduled to be suspended in March this year. Some of the bus transit issues that we observed in the corridor include no crosswalk at the 245 and 272 Washington Street stops. The bus stops are shown in the yellow circle with the T symbols in the circle. There is also no bus stop on the Providence Highway or Vfw Parkway corridor. Transit riders also face crossing wide road with high volume vehicles. There are also poor sidewalk conditions that these riders must use. There is no bicycle facilities within the corridor, and there is lack of bus amenities like shelters and benches at the stops. Next slide. These are street view photos of some of the existing conditions or issues faced by pedestrians and bicyclists. Poor sidewalk conditions for the top left street view photo. A pedestrian crossing signal with no crosswalk at the Marine Rotary. And also between the Marine Rotary and the Spring Street intersection, there is no crosswalk at any of the signalized intersections between these two intersections. In addition, many of the intersections, the wheelchair ramps are not ADA compliant. ADA means Americans with Disability Act. Many of the wheelchair ramps lack detectable warning plates to help people with disabilities to cross at the intersections. Next slide. Travel conditions within the Providence Highway and the VFW Parkway vary by time of day. The worst periods to travel are the weekday PM peak hour between 4 and 5 from the data that we collected, and also on Saturday midday between 1 and 2 p.m. The red circle indicates intersection with very high delay, greater than 55 seconds per vehicle. The orange color indicates intersections with moderate delay, and the green circle indicates intersection with low delay. VFW Parkway and Spring Street intersection experience high delay during weekday PM peak hour. Marine Rotary, the Dedham Mall entrance also experienced moderate delay. Next slide. This shows the Saturday PM peak hour delays. the VFW Parkway and Spring Street, the Marine Rotary, and also the Dedham Mall entrance intersection all experience high delay during this peak hour. Next slide. For the following slides, I will transfer you to MAPC to present the existing conditions for the survey that they conducted.
Right, thank you, Seth. So my name is Christian Brandt. I work at MAPC, and I just want to go over some of our initial survey results with you. I also want to note that the survey is still live, and it will be up until next Friday, the 19th, unless I'm getting that date wrong. Someone will correct me. So you can see the link on the screen right now, but we will also share that with you in the chat. It's also available on our project website, and that link will also be shared with you in the chat. So we conducted this survey. It's been up for, I think, at least 2 months now. And so we asked a bunch of questions, and this is one of them. What are some of the biggest challenges you experience biking or walking around this area? Select all that apply. There were actually a lot more responses than, a lot more options than what we're showing on the screen, but these were the top 7. And as you can see, the top 4, or the top 6 are all within a couple percentage points of each other. And so the top 3 are lack of bike infrastructure, disconnected sidewalk network, and fast traffic and vehicles driving too fast. We also asked people on a scale of 1 through 5, with 1 being very unsafe and 5 being very safe, how they feel doing the following around and along this area, and that would be driving, walking, biking, or taking the bus. So particularly interesting to note is that the middle 2 columns are walking and biking, and that blue color represents very unsafe. So 54% of people felt very unsafe, and an additional 24% of people felt unsafe walking around the corridor. And that percentage of respondents who felt unsafe biking actually increases to 67%. So people who responded to this, 60% of them said that they felt unsafe, very unsafe biking, with an additional 14% saying that they felt unsafe. Driving and taking the bus, a lot of these results are fairly similar. I think the one thing to note is that 26% of respondents indicated that they don't know how safe they feel when taking the bus. And I think we might guess that that means that they don't take the bus in the corridor. So that's kind of where survey respondents are thinking in terms of their safety with regard to these modes. I know that this might be a little bit small on the screen, but these are 2 heat maps that we asked people to respond to in the survey. On the left, you see a heat map for driving safety. So we asked people to click on the map where they felt unsafe driving. And unsurprisingly, you can see that the majority of people clicked in the 2 rotaries. And then, of course, sort of an additional smaller amount of people clicked at some intersections along the corridor. And then on the right, you can see the walking and biking map. Very similar, although there seems to be more people clicking that they feel unsafe in between the rotaries. But again, the 2 rotaries are the sort of cluster area of where people were clicking. So we are now going to do another sort of interactive voting opportunity. We've reached the end of the existing conditions and needs presentation. And so we really want to make sure that we have, that we're not missing anything. And we also want to hear what some things, we want to hear about some things that you might be, that you thought was really interesting from the presentation. So in the next slide, we're going to have a poll everywhere. In order to respond to that, you will need to open up a page in your internet browser by clicking the link that I just shared in the chat. That link will also be up on the screen on the next slide too. It is pollev.com//MAPC poll. Again, I just shared that in the chat. So I encourage you all to open that link. And I'm going to go to the next slide, which will launch the poll. So what we want you to do is answer what stood out for you in the existing conditions presentation. And once we start receiving some results, we'll see those up at the top. Once you get in, you won't necessarily have to sign in, but you can. Great, so I see the first result that we have is the results were not surprising. Everybody seems to agree on the unsafe areas at either end of the corridor, unsafe biking and pedestrian conditions, lack of sidewalks. I also want to note that you can, once you get into the webpage, you can like or you can upvote some of the results. All right, concerns about safety for biking and walking, how car-centric and pedestrian bike unfriendly it is, average speed seemed too low, how unsafe, numbers for daily traffic. I'm seeing some trends here about safety, but it still seems like the comment, the results were not surprising, is getting a lot of traction with folks. All right, so I'm gonna take us down through some of these. Numbers of daily traffic, good amount of data, so we know what to act on, and how dangerous the roads look in a still photo. Very car-centric. Suspicions have been confirmed.
Christian,
Yes.
I'll just mention that people think that there's anything we missed in the analysis, to please add that as well. And you can also, put it in the poll, put it in the chat. We would appreciate that.
Awesome, thanks, Travis.
And if I may, Christian, I did notice some comments, folks, I think we're all, I think as a project team, we were surprised by the speed limit data too. But, over the course of this study, those were the results. And we'll take another look at that. I think many of us have seen folks that have exceeded the speed limit, but it's funny that, we came up with that average number. And so I just want to say, we acknowledge that, and that was a surprise. I don't know if anyone else, it seemed like some other folks shared that. I just wanted to put that out there. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, so I really appreciate all of you who have responded so far. I think we're going to move on, but if you would like to keep responding to this poll, I think you'll be able to do that. I totally appreciate all of the great information and that you've posted in this. I'm going to take one. There we go. All right. So next slide. Visioning, and I will hand this over to Travis.
I'll handle this if you don't
or
mind.
Jeremy,
Christian.
excuse me.
Sorry, Travis. So we're moving on to what I guess the second part of our interactive meeting, and thank you everyone for sharing. So this is where, I think it was no surprise, I think, to everyone that, and I think the photos tell it all, the data shows it all, that there's much to be desired here. And that's our goal. How do we transition this to a 21st century corridor? And so, I'll be frank, this study as of right now, this is looking at the roadway and the sidewalks, the median, et cetera. And at a future slide, we're gonna, and I've heard from a number of folks, we're gonna look to expand this boundary a bit, but as you'll see, 110 feet is a lot to work with, and Seth will talk about, what can we do with all that. So if you can go to the next slide. So we wanted to share some results, again, from the survey that I can't remember the count. I think 1,200, 1,400 folks have participated in, and as a good handful. And thank you again, everyone, for who's participated in that. So, and this is further underlining that this corridor needs major improvement, and I think that can't be understated enough. And I'm glad we're coming to consensus on that. That's great. And then 23, far from my vision. That means it's not even close. And some folks, I think a smaller minority, feel that it's close to their vision. And if you can go to the next slide, Christian. And so part of that that survey online was asking, what's the big idea? What do you guys really, what do folks really want to see here? And I think some of the words that came out, this is a word cloud derived of some of the comments from this survey. Pedestrian sticks out, and I think we've seen through the chat, many folks would love to walk this corridor, but it is obviously not safe and not well maintained. And we see the big word bike and lane. And, I think we can all attest to, I think this COVID era has definitely made us think twice about our recreation opportunities, and probably for the most part that we need more. And I'm guessing a lot of that came into the consideration of where we want this corridor to go, and at least from this, helping guide us. Next slide, if you don't mind. And so I just wanted to point out, and I think some folks have beat me to the punch on this chat, and I've heard from folks in the community that, well, what about this? This corridor, this roadway is really walled off our beloved Charles River, and for the town of Dedham, it's a source of drinking water, but it's also a source for recreation. There's a abundance of wetlands, but I wanted to show that and tease that. We are working, and hopefully readily soon, working with our elected officials, we will have additional funding to expand the scope of this project and do a feasibility analysis of what can we do outside of this roadway that's right adjacent. And so I circled in yellow, this is a best opportunity for providing some sensitive passive recreation. I mean sensitive because this is a wildlife habitat. There's a lot of sensitive wetlands, but there are opportunities to provide more recreation amenities. I think we can provide a lot on this roadway, but that doesn't mean we can't have more. And I mean, I don't think we talked about this number, but really from Bridge Street to the Marine Rotary is almost 2 mile stretch. And so this stretch is probably at least a mile. So, 2 mile jog back and forth, that's a good daily exercise. That's a nice bike ride. There's opportunity for trails. And I would say a recent game changer that we've in Dedham is that where I put the star is that there's about 7 acres that the town has just acquired that could provide a nice landing spot to begin exploration of some of this habitat and some of this area. And ultimately, I think a longer term is, can we connect to the recreation areas of Dedham and West Roxbury? This is a collaboration, and maybe the trails can help connect us. And I think that would be a great thing to aspire to. So we hear you, and I think that's definitely a goal, and we want to add more to this scope. And I remain confident that we'll be able to expand that. And probably by the time you see us next, we'll have done a bit of a technical feasibility, really looking at the topography here. Is there opportunity for that? What are the, where are the areas that are wetlands? Where are the areas that are protected for wildlife habitats? And any other sensitive areas. So hopefully we'll have that analysis when we come back, and as we'll talk. But I just wanted to point that out, and I think there's a lot of support for this, and I think we all want more recreation opportunities, and this presents a great case in addition to this roadway that we're talking about. So I just wanted to highlight that tonight, that we hear you, and we're going to continue to pursue that avenue. Next slide, thank you. And I am going to hand it back to Seth.
Okay. Thank you, Jeremy. These are examples to help in the visioning process. Just north of the roadway that we are studying is the Vfw Parkway in West Roxbury. And this portion of the roadway has a wide median. It has a sidewalk with a buffer, very green, and it's quite different from the corridor that we are studying. It's more pedestrian and bicycle friendly than the corridor we are dealing with. So I just wanted to show this as an example to head us towards the visioning process. The next picture, top right, is the Mystic Valley Parkway in Medford. And again, it's a roadway that is close, similar to the Providence Highway and Vfw Parkway. It has 2 lanes for moving traffic in each direction. It has a wide median with trees, a wide shoulder, and also the pedestrian and bicycles are separated from the roadway. Both pedestrian and bicycle use a shared use path or multi-use path, which is far from the traveling lanes. And this makes pedestrian and bicycle feel comfortable and they choose to walk and bike. At the bottom figure shows a shared use path, which is separated from the traveling lanes. And this is some of the examples that I want to bring to prompt our thinking and also prepare us into the visioning process. Next slide. This is an example cross-section where we have 2 lanes for moving traffic in each direction and a wide shoulder on each side of the roadway. The sidewalk is close to the travel lane and it lacks greenery. The graphic at the bottom shows a potential cross-section which utilizes the shoulder and creates space for walking and bicycling, and also a median with trees and providing shade for pedestrian and bicycle. So the example cross-section with the wide shoulder has been modified into a potential cross-section that is shown below it. Next slide. This is also another visioning example. The laneway is in the city of Lynn, Massachusetts. And the laneway is a 6-lane roadway, very, very wide, with 3 lanes in each direction, and at certain location, even a left-hand lane, making it 7 lanes. It's very, very difficult and dangerous to cross. So the example roadway cross-section is modified to a potential cross-section by right-sizing the roadway, reducing it from 3 lanes in each direction to 2 lanes in each direction, and using the space, the lane that's taken away, to create spaces for pedestrian and bicycles. Also, the median has been widened, which makes it easier to cross the roadway. So this is an example of visioning from a wide roadway, very difficult to cross, into a pedestrian-friendly roadway that has been right-sized with complete street and space for all users. Next slide. And again, this example is from the laneway, which has a high bus ridership. And again, the example cross-section has been modified, providing bus rapid transit lanes in the middle to encourage bus transit. And also the lanes have been reduced to 2 travel lanes in each direction. And some of the space that were taken has been used to provide spaces for pedestrian and bicycle. Next slide. Okay. The next portion of this meeting is the breakout room, and I will hand over to Christian.
Great, thanks, Seth. So we are about to go into breakout rooms. When you are being transferred into the breakout room, your screen will shrink and it will look like you have left the meeting. Don't worry, you haven't. You will be teleported from this main room into the breakout room where you'll be able to have a more detailed discussion with your fellow attendees. So I am about to open up those rooms.
Christian, can you let folks know the time length on this again?
Yes, we will be in these rooms until 8:15. So that is about 20 minutes of conversation. You'll have a facilitator and we'll also have someone in each room taking notes. I'm just going to take a little bit of extra time and shuffle some folks around.
While you're doing that, Christian, I just want to let all the audience member again, thank you for all. There's a large group here, but And these breakout groups feel comfortable. If you don't feel comfortable and you just want to listen, that is fine. Just make sure you would turn off your screen. But we obviously encourage folks, if they would like to participate in these smaller groups and want to respond to these questions, please do so. But don't feel like you have to. If you're here just to listen, that is fine. So no pressure.
All right, so I'm going to be sending all of you into breakout rooms in just a second. Hello, everybody. Welcome back. Just going to give us a little bit of time for everyone else to return to the main room. Thanks so much for your patience. Right, I think we still have some stragglers. But we have 10 seconds left until the rooms close and everybody gets brought back here. All right. All right, thank you, everybody. Welcome back.
So, Christian, if I might, this is Joe Blankenship
Yes,
with the
please.
WPA. Can one of the note takers copy and paste all 4 of the questions in the chat? Our group didn't get to the last question, and we just want to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to respond to that.
Yes, and I realized I said I was going to do that, and then I did not do that before we moved in. So I will, if somebody could post that, that would be great.
All right, great.
Awesome.
It looks like Sam did. Thank you.
Sam did. Thank you, Sam. So I want to invite one of our facilitator or note taker from each group to give us a quick recap of what that group talked about. So we're going to start with Travis and Jessica. So if one of you would like to give us a quick recap, that'd be great.
Well, I'll start and I'll let Jessica chime in. How's that? So first of all, we had some great feedback from everyone, and I just want to say I appreciate everyone's feedback, especially in the chat. It's about the liveliest chat I've seen in one of these Zoom meetings. It's been great. So one thing we talked about was like some big ideas in terms of like a shared path, especially along the Charles, and like the Charles side, I think is really a key piece that I think we talked about in terms of how we connect to that, and also that when there's the connectivity, that it should be part of something that also connects to Bridge Street and making eventually like maybe a loop around the other side of the Charles. And how does it connect to maybe a larger network? The bike lanes, for example, at Spring Street, and how do we continue those through so that people can get to Dedham Square? That whole connectivity is really important. We talked about things like there should be more green. Even talked about ideas. We had some like discussion about if we narrow lanes beyond like 11 feet to 10 feet to 8 feet, like what's the proper lane width? Should there be some ideas to maybe cut down the straightaway? It's kind of like a place that some people use late at night for racing. So those are some ideas, and maybe if there's a way to make it make the corridor slower overall so that it's safer for everyone. I think it was some of those ideas we talked about. Jessica, do you want to add anything to that? I know you're the one taking notes.
I think you covered it all. Thanks.
Okay.
Awesome. All right, so next up we have Joe and Sukanya.
Sorry, you think I could find the mute button after a year of this. So Sukanya, feel free to add to what I say, but basically I want to echo some of what Travis just said, right? We had a good conversation about wanting to make sure that the Parkway becomes a more predictable place to be, a more appealing place to be, and a place that supports the local residents, business owners, and patrons of the establishments in the area. So if there's a way to sort of make the Parkway be less sort of focused on throughput and more focused on sort of being in community, whether that's through the multi-use path option or increased landscaping, safer intersection crossings was a big one. Those were kind of the big themes. I don't know, Sukanya, did I miss anything?
No, I think you got it. Yep.
Awesome, thank you both. All right, next up is Sam and Elise.
Sorry, I also wasn't able to find the mute button. So we had a great conversation as well. We hit on a couple, I would say, overarching topics. In terms of how close to the VFW Parkway was to the vision, I think we summed it up with as far away from a vision as anyone in their right mind would have, which is a direct quote. In terms of what our vision is, I think there was a lot of comments about trees and greenery, just making it look more accessible and like more aesthetically pleasing to be on. Making lanes smaller. There is a lot of comments about how the VFW Parkway is kind of a different feel from the Providence Highway. And while they both have issues, going from VFW Parkway in West Roxbury to Dedham is just kind of night and day in terms of the access and just the greenery along the street. There, we discussed a lot about having like pedestrian walkovers over the street. That was brought up. We kind of talked about how that would affect ADA needs versus, you know, having to coordinate the lights for pedestrians to cross. Another one of our big ideas was making sure there's some kind of access to Motherbrook, some kind of way to enhance its history and make it more accessible for people. And yeah, just being able to bike along the corridor safely, not just for recreation, but for transportation, to be able to get to errands and just transport along the highway.
Awesome. Thanks, Elise. All right, next up we have Jeremy.
Thank you. You know, it's the continuing theme of there's a lot of disconnections and correcting those and connecting things, whether it's by pedestrian waterways, trees, medians, etc. So, you know, again, over emphasizing that continuing theme. But I think one good point that came out, I think we're talking, you know, a lot of this stuff is a longer term vision. It's going to take some time, but what are we going to do in the meantime? Because, you know, we're looking at these pictures, that's not acceptable. And what are we going to do in the short term? So folks, you know, and I didn't even think about that. What are we going to do now until that happens? It you know, takes some time before we can really reconstruct this and bring about the community vision that we all want. So what are we going to do in the meantime, and how can we ensure that some of these easy fixes are, you know, relatively easy fixes, like you know, crosswalks that aren't painted, and or accessibility, even the weeds on the sidewalks, or quote unquote sidewalks, are remedied so they're passable. So I didn't think of that, and I thought that was a very good take that we shouldn't forget.
Awesome. Thanks, Jeremy. All right, next up is Michelle's group.
Thank you. So just to echo my colleagues, many in my group mentioned that it's not safe. Someone actually mentioned that in the beginning, when they moved into Dedham, they wanted to take the bus, to bike, to walk, however, decided not to do so after they realized how unsafe it actually was. Some mentioned it was depressing, the intersection is terrible, and that there is a missed opportunity in this stretch if things are not changed. The potential opportunities or the things to change that people addressed are adding more trees, a park area, grass, mentioning how great it would be to be able to walk to a grocery store, decreasing that speed limit, and making some type of buffer zone, and also some type of bench to look at the river, but also not encroach on that wildlife, when mentioning the increase of that nature that people have been able to see lately. Also ensuring that there are safe pedestrian crosswalks, and then recalibrating this corridor to today's times, as opposed to staying in the past.
Great. Thanks, Michelle. All right, next up is Mark. Or Bill, excuse me.
I believe Mark was going to make a few comments, but I could if Mark's not there. The Okay.
Oh.
So
I
Mark's
just made Mark a co-host. I think he, for some reason, wasn't a co-host anymore.
I
You should be able to.
I get kicked out of the meeting earlier. I don't know why.
Yes.
okay.
Leaving the break rooms.
Yeah.
All right. Our group, there was basically two main focuses. One of them was down at Marine Circle, that, you know, the circle, just because it's always been a circle doesn't mean it needs to stay a circle there. That, you know, to look at other alternatives, look at it making it a regular four-way standardized intersection type of thing to help improve pedestrian and bicyclists through there. And then another major thing was connecting to this green space along the river, and not just connecting to it, but also making it a way of travel for people. One person mentioned that right now it would be nice to be able to access the Stop and Shop in that green area across the roadway there from the Riverdale section of Dedham. From that side as well, that, you know, people do like to come down and shop in that area, and they might like to walk down to the grocery stores and the shopping at Dedham Mall. But they're kind of cut off from being on that side of the river type of thing. Another thing they mentioned was also possibly doing a bridge crossing of the river from the Bridge Street side to the VFW Park side, to better connections for those residents that live on the west side of the river there. And also to make it more accessible for viewing events that are on the river. I guess there's a school that uses the river in that section for its crew races. So, and I guess a lot of people currently even try to park and view some of the race there by parking at the little parking lot that's at the existing dam right now with Motherbrook. So trying to improve that type of viewing of the river as well. So.
Thanks, Mark. All right, so we are reaching to the end of our time, so I still want to make sure that we get to the folks who in the groups that haven't reported back yet. But I would invite us to be very quick and also maybe focus on some things that we haven't heard so far. So next up is Seth or Casey.
Casey,
Seth,
go
would you
ahead.
rather go? Okay, I'll try and be quick. So a lot of the same points were echoed in our group. We started with the vision being, or the current conditions being the polar opposite of the vision for the roadway. The idea of taking inspiration from Cambridge and Boston, where they have walking and biking paths along the Charles, and tying into that, creating that sort of space along this roadway and providing a separation between the vehicles and the bicyclists and pedestrians. We also discussed how it would increase the ability to travel from Dedham to and through Boston if there were safe bicycle facilities along the roadway and through the intersections. We began with discussing the Spring Street intersection and then got on to the Marine Rotary discussion, which was just, maybe it shouldn't be both an intersection and a rotary, maybe it should be just one. Seth, do you have any other points to add?
I think you said them all.
Okay.
Awesome, thanks. All right, next up is John.
Hey there, and I'll try not to repeat anyone else's. I think we had 3 bicyclists in my group, which was awesome. And one of them was Lee from the Milton Bike Committee. I just wanted to mention that because the stakeholders for this corridor sometimes don't live in the corridor, and I know there's a lot of those stakeholders who are not participating or able to participate tonight. I would just, from our conversation, talk about connectivity and the reasons for that connectivity. Lee had talked about a bike tour that they led really from the Neponset Greenway all the way to the Charles to look at the beauty and the history of the Mother Brook. And there's other, there's the natural beauty, there's architecture, there's food, there's coffee. There's lots of reasons to be out on a bike or walking in the corridor. And it's not necessarily just in the corridor, but different radii out, east and west to some of all of the assets that the community, not only Dedham, but the communities have to offer.
Awesome, thank you. All right, next up is David and Sasha.
Excellent, thank you. Almost all of our participants in our group were bicycle commuters at one time or another, and so some of their concerns were to actually create separate bicycle pedestrian infrastructure along the corridor. There was some discussion about whether whether the bicycles and pedestrians should be separate from each other or shared, and that I think in part depends on the space and is design consideration. As others have said, people definitely want to extend the park-like corridor that's to the north and extend it down through this corridor. There were several people that were commuted by bus, and it was mentioned that if they miss one bus in the circle in the rotary there, that they often have to go to another location to catch the other bus, and so that's a challenge. And the whole, in addition to walking through the rotary, crossing the rotary itself, so that was a concern with safety and timing and the way and catching the buses, and just cleaning up the existing corridor and creating a more park-like setting overall. So.
Awesome, thank you. And last but not least, Mara.
Hi, I'll say that our group echoed pretty much everyone that has been said already. The one, I'd say, different thing that I'd like to highlight is that folks are really interested in how the roadway can help reimagine the land uses around it and how we could have some more appropriate land uses for a walking and biking corridor.
Awesome, thank you so much. All right, next steps. I think I'm passing this back to Jeremy.
Yes, I'll take it on. And awesome. Once again, thank you, everyone. This is going to give us a lot to chew on and a lot of great ideas. So as we said, this is our first touch at this. This is an action plan, and we have, rather tight timeline. We're hoping to come back to you in May or June with some preliminary concepts that has been furthered, has taken into consideration all that we've heard tonight and all that we've gathered thus far. So in the blue, those are things that we are in the community engagement now, and we're going to look at the needs assessment. We're going to develop some concepts based on what we've seen. You saw some preliminary ideas of the width of the roadway. How can we piece up this pie? And it definitely differs as long as when you go from north to south, it grows, it ebbs and flows. And then ultimately we're going to come back with some concepts for you to choose or to obviously discuss with us, and I'm sure you'll provide us feedback on what you like and that you don't. And as I'll attest again, this has been a very active chat. So thank you all, and no shortage of ideas that we could definitely use and we will use. And so we'll come back roughly May or June. So stay in touch. We have your contacts, and we hope you'll spread the word. And then ultimately, we're going to come up with a final study report that will hopefully lead us to the next phase, which is we're going to continue to pursue funding to realize this roadway. And I know our elected officials are listening, and they're ambitious, and they want to see this vision. They want to see this area turned into the vision that we all attest and aspire to. And so if you can go to the next slide, Christian. So we hope that you'll all stay in touch. So we've gathered all this data tonight. I want to make sure, I want to emphasize that we have gathered this all. We've recorded each one of these breakout groups. We're going to be mining through all this information, pooling it all together, and our consultant team's going to go through it, digest it, try to find the common themes, the great ideas, and start to put that together and sift through it and realize this concept along with our friends from CTPS who are looking at the hard data of this roadway and this corridor. So again, this is our the website. You'll find this video and this presentation up probably next week. We got to do a little bit of editing, but you'll see it up next week, and I believe we'll probably be promoting that. So if folks couldn't make it tonight because it was a 70-degree day and they wanted to enjoy that until May, I don't blame them, but there'll be plenty of opportunity to participate and watch it. We're open to feedback anytime, please. And you can see the three of the leads on this project. You can see our emails below. As we said, the survey will be up until the end of next week. So if you know anyone that hasn't taken it or you haven't taken it, please consider taking that survey. And again, we'll see you again in May and June. Of course, we'll publicize this. We want to make sure we can everyone's coming. And if you know other folks that want to participate, please spread the word. And we're always open to hearing your feedback. And of course, thank you to the team tonight for making this happen. It takes a village to pull this off. And of course, thank you, West Roxbury, Dedham residents, businesses, and everyone else that participated. And we'll see you soon. And thank you very much.